Explaining more the levels of analysis. The first thing that comes into our mind when we think about war is who won. However, this shouldn't be the case because in war there is no actual victory, there are just different levels of defeat. Someone once said if you want to ask who won the war, it's like asking who won the San Francisco earthquake. However, is war a natural occurrence? The peace wish runs deeply within the Russian people, and it has been said to run deeply within the Americans too. However, this isn't a very bright future because we always have to keep in mind that the past and the present are connected and that the history will always come in the way. A question that has been asked a lot is, can we have peace in areas that had previously war? And this question usually gets pessimistic answers. Instead of asking that, we can ask, can we have peace more often in the future than we did in the past? Or are there ways of decreasing incidents of war if we increase the chances of peace? And the answer to those questions is yes, we can. Peace isn't out of reach, and we can reach peace. However, we have to understand the causes of war to be able to know how we can reach peace. The first image, international conflict and human behavior. It is important to know that most reasons of war are found in the nature and behavior of man. We are the causes of war. It's either because we are selfish, we have aggressive impulses, or we just want to do a stupid act. So does that mean if we change man that we will get rid of war and we will reach peace? Henry Wadsworth Longfellow said while he was in Springfield, where half the power that fills the world with terror, where half the wealth bestowed on camps and courts, given to redeem the human mind from error, there were no need of arsenal and forts. The explanation for that is that people want to follow the right politics. They want to adopt them and they want to live with the right politics. However, they don't know what the right politics are. How will they be able to follow the right politics? Okay, the idea that education can be the remedy of war is being widespread, and people are being open to that idea. Beverly Nicholas in 1930s thought that if Norman Angell could be made the educational dictator of the world, war would vanish like the morning mist in a single generation, and we would see peace everywhere. However, Bertrand saw that if we decrease the instincts of people, we would have peace, while others thought we have to channel the energies that cause war, and that way we will reach peace. Okay, we have two people who thought about ways that we can turn the man of wanting to go to war to do something else. We have Aristophanes and William James. Okay, Aristophanes thought that if we make man choose, maybe they won't go to war. Meaning, he had an idea that if the wives would take more care of their husbands and give them pleasure and so on, they would choose to stay with their wives instead of going to war. While William James thought that we can't change the nature of man, and war is one of the natures of man. However, we can divert it, meaning instead of asking man to do military services and whatsoever, they can do other things. For example, they can mine coal, they can build ships, they can build roads, they can focus on doing other activities like washing dishes and new clothes and whatsoever. They both, Aristophanes and William James, thought that peace comes if we change man. However, they both had different ways of doing that. One was moral, intellectual outlook, and the other was psychosocial behavior. The second image of international conflict and the international structure of state. Okay. So the first image didn't exclude the state. However, when we say the state acts, it actually means that the people act. To understand war and peace, political analysis must be made to complement and order the findings of psychology and sociology. It is impossible to explain the occurrence or non-occurrence of a war without international politics, because a country usually happens in a war usually happens with the name of a country or a state. So without international politics, we can't explain the occurrence or non-occurrence of war. The secondary image focuses on the internal organizations of states. Okay, so this Bowden concludes the best way to preserving a state and guaranteeing it against sedition, rebellion, and civil war is to keep the subject in amity and one with another, and to this and to find an enemy against whom they can make common cause. Okay, Bowden thinks that if we focus on a certain thing and work all together, instead of having a war against each other, we focus our goal and do war against someone else. William Henry Stewart followed this reasoning, and that's why he promoted a unity in the country when he urged a vicious foreign policy on Lincoln that might have declared war on Spain and France. The internal defects to explain those external acts of the state that bring war can be different than the forms, meaning that if a government is bad doesn't mean that defect isn't completely in the government. There might just be something in the government bad, not the whole government is bad. Okay. Some nations say that war is a necessity, and they believe that the only way to reach certain things is if we do war. So can you understand that if states doing certain acts is causing war, that we have to change state and that we have to have a good state? What is the definition of a good state? There are very different opinions on what the definition of a good state is and what it can be. For example, Karl Marx defines good in terms of ownership and the means of production. Immanuel Kant in terms of abstract principle of right. Woodrow Wilson in terms of national self-determination and modern democratic organization. Each one of those things has a different opinion of what a good state actually means. But they all actually agree on that in order to have peace, the state needs to be reformed, and we need to have a common reform. Okay. Wilson believes that we have some prerequisites in order to have peace. Those prerequisites are collective security, disarmament, improvement of internal understanding, and however, history proved for him that this can be done easily in undemocratic states, and we can't reach that. We have to understand one thing when you think about war, that a bad state will cause war, but a good state doesn't mean peace. We have to understand when we think about states that a state will influence the society and the people will influence the society. However, the society also influences the people to act in a certain way, and this is the cause in international relations. States make substance of international relations, but international relations also influence the states to do the certain actions. Okay. Third image, international conflict and international anarchy. We are aware that we have many sovereign states with no law of enforceable system among them, and they're all judging the grievances and ambition according to the dictator they have, meaning they're all doing certain things and going into conflict because the dictator decides to do that. In that case, the state has to rely on itself, and this isn't a new idea, we've all been aware of that. Suicides said it was the growth of the Athenian power which terrified the Lacedaemonians and forced them into war. And John Adams said a similar idea that a war with friends, if just a necessity, might ruin us and fund and blind affections, which no nation ought ever feel toward another, as our experience in more than one instance abundantly testifies. So this could kind of be explained. They're both trying to say that the love affairs between states is inappropriate and dangerous, and we don't know what to expect or what will happen to us. Okay. We have to understand that a state is their own boss. And each state is their own boss, meaning that if a state believes that if I go to war, I'm going to reach my policies and I'm going to get my foreign affairs done or whatsoever, the state can go to war and do that. This doesn't explain it going to war, but they believe that they have the right to do that if in this way they're going to reach their goals. And the ones who get affected the most in that are the weak ones, because if they aren't able to fight back, they're going to lose and it will weaken them even more. Men are selfish and they don't like to accept the idea that sometimes they need help. And before in time, men didn't like the idea of cooperating and helping each other and working with someone else. Unless they were forced and they didn't have a choice, it's either cooperate or die because of national hazards or certain things that happened that affected both, and they had to have help from each other. Okay. However, sometimes you can't trust people completely, and you don't know if at the end of the day they're really going to help you or they're just looking out for themselves. Montesquieu and Rousseau counter Spinoza analysis, and they think that the source of conflict isn't in the minds of man, but in the nature of social activity. Okay. However, Rousseau also believes that if one knows how to receive justice from God, they don't need law or government or certain things that tell them what to do. And Spinoza has a similar idea that states that men, so far as they live in obedience with each other and harmony and acceptance, they can live with each other peacefully. Okay, if you think about Spinoza, it is the good of all, and we have to trust each other and all working for the interest of each other. However, if we define cooperative action as rational and any deviation from it irrational, we must agree with Spinoza that the conflict comes from the irrationality of man. However, Rousseau believes that it is true as much as it is irrelevant, and he believes that we can't run away from accidents, and sometimes accidents are necessary to happen, and there's no automatic harmony in anarchy, and we will have certain conflicts. Okay, we have certain problems with anarchy that come, and we have two solutions for them if you want to use them. To impose an effective control on the separate and imperfect state, and to remove the states from the spheres of the accidental, that is to define the good state as is perfect, that will no longer be particular. So we're kind of saying that the state is so perfect and it doesn't do mistakes and it doesn't need to exist here, so we just get rid of it and the problems will be removed. Okay, we have an idea about the third image and the word government that says that if we have a word government, that we wouldn't have international wars happening, which is true. We wouldn't have international wars. However, we would start having an increase of civil wars and conflicts within each other. So this idea kind of seems impossible to happen. Because if you're trying to get rid of war, we're only getting rid of international wars and moving towards civil wars. Okay. The first and second images in relation to the third. Many believe that the Soviet Union is the cause of war, and if you get rid of the Soviet Union, that we will have peace. However, wars have existed for centuries, and the Soviet Union only existed for decades. And we have got rid of the Soviet Union, and we are living proof that even without the Soviet Union, there isn't peace, and wars still exist, and things are still going on. States who are peacefully inclined with each other would want that would want to live through long periods of peace without having to face war. However, this can't always happen because an individual moral standard act, when a state tries to perform this act, it could turn into something very bad. Instead of trying to make something good out of it, the opposite will happen and war will happen. However, in international politics, a partial solution can actually stop wars, meaning if a major country becomes pacifistic, this can actually stop and make a world peace. However, this doesn't mean that we're going to have peace forever, but it will stop for a certain period of time and we will live through peace during a certain period of time. Okay, so Rousseau reflects on the third image and says that the analysis of the consequences arising from the framework of a state action. He also believes that as long as we operate within a state-nation system, a war can be explained. He says that there aren't accident causes, meaning not the irrationality of man nor the defects in a state, but any incident can cause or lead to war. That's what he believes in his theory. Okay. Structure of a state doesn't make a country attack you. In fact, it's the location, the size, if you're weak, you're strong, if you have something they want, if you interest them, it's the government, your history of them. Those are the factors that make a country attack them. Country A wanting things doesn't explain country A having a war. This is explained in an example in the book that me wanting $1 million doesn't give me permission or explains my action of me going to steal a bank. However, if you have a law enforcement that doesn't do anything and that's weak and whatsoever, this will lead of having more crimes, meaning that people start stealing more money and people would go and choose the easier way, which would be stealing money to reach what they want. So this actually says that wars can happen because there's nothing that can stop wars from happening. Okay, Rousseau's analysis explains the reoccurrence of war without explaining any given war or why a certain war has happened. At any time, at any moment, war can start because a country decides to have a war and to strike. However, this doesn't mean that it's the right way to do so. 2 points omitted from the first and second image prescription. Okay, if an effect produced by 2 or more causes, the effect is not permanently eliminated by removing one of them. Meaning, if you have more than one cause that is causing a war to happen, if I remove only one of them, doesn't mean that I removed the problem and now we have permanently peace and the war can stop. An endeavor launched against one cause to neglect the others can be worse than making things better. This means that if you focus only on one problem instead of focusing on all of them, we would cause more problem and more tension instead of removing them and eliminating them, and things would turn out to be worse than better. Okay, knowing all that, we can understand that the immediate causes of war are the state act and the individual act. Okay, let's take an example that state A has something that state B wants. This makes state A an aggressor in the present because it fears what state B might do in the future to reach what they want. Okay. Churchill once said, "Small matters are only the symptoms of dangerous diseases and are only important for that reason. Behind them lie the interests and the passions and the destiny of mighty races of man and long antagonism expression themselves in thirst. This explains that we don't always have to look or can't always look at the small picture. We have to look at the big image because the first and the second image, meaning the immediate causes, aren't the only causes, and we would have other factors that would influence and cause war to happen or the problem to happen. If we just focus on the first symptoms, like he said, we're not going to understand further what will happen. Conclusion. Okay, the third image, Jay and Hamilton all come to the same conclusion that having separate sovereign states will always have a possibility of war. We're always going to face war if we have separate sovereign states. Okay, we have to understand that if the changes from the factors that include the first and the second image aren't there and won't exist, the sovereign states can cause war in the future. Okay, another thing is that the word government is a remedy for world war. However, like we say, it's easier said than done. We can't easily say that word government is a remedy for world war. However, we can't reach that because we're never going to be able to have a word government. Not all countries are going to agree. We're not going to find the same systems that all would follow, or the same policies, or having the same structure, or whatsoever. So we wish we would have a world government so that the world wouldn't have war. However, this is something that we aren't able to reach anytime soon. Okay, we understand that the third image describes the framework of world politics. But without a first and second image, we can't understand or adapt the knowledge of the forces to determine those politics, which actually means that we need them or they need each other. The first, second, and third image work together to reach the answers they all need to have. So the first and the second image describe the forces of the world politics. However, it is important to have the third image because it explains the importance and predicts the results of the wars that happen.